Shy waitress transforms encounter with billionaire's deaf mother discover the amazing sign language. Emma stood behind the counter of the Maplewood diner, her hands anxiously fiddling with the order pad as she watched the door swing open. Every morning was the same, the constant clatter of cutlery breaking up the comfortable hum of conversation. But today felt different, charged with an unexplainable energy. A well-dressed man walked in, his tailored suit stark against the diner's modest decor. Behind him, a woman with gentle features followed, her gaze scanning the room with an air of quiet confidence. A sudden wave of unease washed over Emma as she recognized the complexities of this encounter looming ahead. Daniel, the businessman, commanded attention without uttering a word. But it was Margaret, his deaf mother, who captured Emma's focus. Despite the business-casual sharpness of her son's appearance, Margaret radiated warmth. Emma's heart raced, she yearned to engage but felt the familiar gnaw of self-doubt. If only she could reveal the part of herself dedicated to sign language and aspiration that felt impossible amid the clinking plates and heavy burdens of her reality. She forced a smile, replaying rehearsed greetings in her mind. "Good morning. May I take your order?" The words came out shaky. Daniel spoke to his mother, and Emma hesitated. They wouldn't see her as anything more than a waitress. Could she show them the passions that lay beneath her surface, or would she forever remain a cog in this endless cycle of low wages and expectations? Heart pounding, she remembered her grandmother's frail shoulders, the weight of her medical bills, the lasting need for financial support. Chronic worry gnawed at her, keeping her tethered to this diner and its limitations. Yet, there was an itch for more, a reckless dream of classrooms and teaching that felt as tantalizing as it was frightening. A flicker of determination ignited within her when the two took their seats. Emma approached, this time equipped with courage. She squatted beside Margaret and welcomed her using sign language. Almost instantly, joy sparkled in the older woman's eyes, a fluent exchange of stories and struggles flowing effortlessly between them. They spoke of loss and family. The connection ignited something in Emma she didn't know she craved. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue, but then the mood shifted. Daniel interrupted their exchange, frustrated when he noticed his mother veering toward Emma's world of conversation. The tension between their socio-economic realities seeped into the air, highlighting the stark differences that divided them. Emma felt herself shrink back, unworthy of the connection that had instantly flared between her and Margaret. Deep within, doubts resurfaced. Could this friendship transcend the economic divide, or was it destined to falter? The whispers of town gossip crept into her mind, reminding her of her humble packhorse existence in contrast to Daniel's wealth. As Emma watched the misunderstanding escalate, uncertainty spiraled into anguish. Every cell in her body trembled at the thought of losing this opportunity, losing Margaret. Would she choose stability, or dare to break out of the cycle that confined her? A sudden thought cut her. Every family holds secrets. Who was she to judge their challenges? Caught between her aspirations and the constant weight of loyalty to her grandmother, Emma stood at the precipice of a pursuit wholly daunting. Just as hope flickered in her heart, the imbalance of their worlds felt suffocating, and she stood burning with a choice that could shatter everything she held dear. Emma felt the familiar tightness in her chest as Daniel's frown cast a cloud over the moment she shared with Margaret. The air crackled with unspoken words and expectations, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider, a mere waitress occupying space that belonged to boundless wealth and privilege. Was this a fleeting connection, or could it be the beginning of something transformative? Her internal battle roared louder than the din of the diner. Looking down at her uniform, the fabric felt heavier, a reminder of her responsibilities and her grandmother's ongoing needs. The bright colors of the diner around her felt muted under the pressure of decision. Shielding herself from comparison, Emma contemplated her own worth. Could she carve her own path? She noticed Margaret's soft smile, and for a moment, the weight lightened. "Thank you for your kindness," Margaret signed, her hands moving gracefully as she communicated. That simple acknowledgement ignited a flame of resilience in Emma's heart, pushing her fears aside. She realized this moment was not just about her, it was about making connections that could transcend their differences. In that, there was strength. Perhaps stepping beyond the predictable confines of her world could forge new opportunities. "May I show you something?" Emma asked hesitantly, fearful of Daniel's disapproval but determined nonetheless. She mimicked the signs she had practiced so often, unsure but willing to try. With each movement, she could feel the world narrowing until it was just her and Margaret, the connection pulsing between them like electricity. Margaret's eyes widened with delight, and her hands danced in response, joy radiating from her every gesture. Voices around them blurred into the background as they engaged in an unspoken rhythm of teaching and learning. Daniel's disapproval became a distant echo, and for a few pure minutes, Emma felt the burden of her life lift, replaced by hope and passion. Yet, when Emma looked to Daniel, his arms were crossed, his expression tight. "Can you not interrupt our meal with your antics?" he said, breaking into their bubble. Emma's heart plummeted. Intent she had intended as a bridge felt like an intrusion. Margaret's expression faltered too, a subtle shift that suggested she understood the implications of her son's words. Emma felt stung, both for herself and for the connection they had shared. It was a heart-wrenching reminder of the societal lines that existed between them, unyielding like stone walls. Still, something deeper stirred within Emma. As she stood nervously in silence, she recognized this was her moment. Although Daniel's words stung, they weren't enough to snuff the spark ignited by Margaret's warmth. Suddenly, she contemplated her dreams of teaching. If she could integrate her passion for sign language into a broader context, perhaps she could bridge these societal divides not just for herself, but for others like Margaret. As the plate clattered down in front of Margaret, the brief moment of connection sparked a turnaround of thought. Emma couldn't let a single interaction define her worth. "I'd like to be better at this," Emma said quietly, but her voice carried a weight of determination. She would approach sign language not as a hobby or aspiration, but as a tool for empowerment. And with that resolution came a newfound clarity. Yet instincts of self-preservation pulled at her, urging her to retreat, to hold on to the safety of familiarity. Emma took a deep breath. "I'll learn from this. I'll seek out courses, sign up for classes. I want to teach one day," she affirmed, directing her gaze to Margaret. Daniel scoffed at her resolve, the dismissive glare returning with a snarl of disbelief. But Emma held her ground, an emergence of fire within her spirit. Just then, she decided she wouldn't be hindered by Daniel's skepticism or her own fears. The diner buzzed around them, the smell of coffee and breakfast clinging to the air, but all Emma could think about was the door to change standing slightly ajar in front of her. Standing firmly. At the brink, she felt a pulse, the insistent beat of a new chapter in her life echoing her thoughts, but in her eagerness, internal doubts surfaced once again. What if she faced yet different barriers, academics that spun beyond her reach or personal sacrifices that would challenge her loyalty to her family? Emma glanced back at Margaret, and she could see shimmering threads of connection holding both their narratives. Whatever path lay ahead, there would be challenges, but she had to seize this urge for growth before it slipped away, before the weight of reality crushed her again. Determined to confront not just external obstacles, but the uncertainties within, Emma stepped closer, ready to grasp whatever came next. But fate had a way of pulling the carpet from under her feet, and just as she felt fully ready to leap, an unexpected visitor walked through the door, and everything began to unravel. Emma's heart raced as she caught sight of the newcomer, an imposing figure enveloped in an air of confidence that immediately shifted the atmosphere in the diner. The door swung open, allowing a gust of wind to swirl around her, an unwelcome reminder of the graveness of her situation. Freshly pressed and sharply dressed, the man's presence darkened the bright diner, igniting whispers that ricocheted around the booth like fireworks. Her mind buzzed, torn between excitement and dread. Who was he? More importantly, how might he affect her tenuous connection with Margaret? She had just begun to feel the warmth of possibility, only to encounter this chill of uncertainty. The man's eyes scanned the room and landed on Daniel, who stood erect, a blend of surprise and irritation written all over his face. "Dad," he called out, the warmth of his voice unmistakably laced with authority. The atmosphere thickened like syrup, and Emma felt the tension curling around her. "Alex," Daniel replied sharply, rising to meet his son, their embrace awkward, a mechanical exchange devoid of familiar warmth. Emma focused on the moment, knitting her brows slightly. There was something unspoken between them that raised her curiosity and concern. As the men spoke, Emma caught fragments of their conversation. "You're back too soon," Daniel said, his tone darkening as Alex spoke about financing, investments, and the latest venture he was excited about. The power dynamics were blazing between father and son, and here she stood, a mere observer in the face of such complexity, her own aspirations tethered to the ground with uncertainty. With a slight nod, Emma turned her attention back to Margaret. Here was a woman full of life, a beacon of unyielding spirit, shining brightly amidst the competition. It was enough to reignite the embers within Emma. This was her chance to dissolve the fear that bound her. But what would it take to unearth the courage she so desperately needed? "Margaret," she ventured softly, fumbling but determined, "can we practice together? I want to learn how to communicate better, for you, for me." Her heart drummed loudly in her chest, the risk of vulnerability overwhelming but necessary. Margaret's face lit up. Without hesitating, she signed enthusiastically, transforming their surroundings into a personal sanctuary. The outside noise faded, the hustle of the diner melting away into oblivion. Emma dove into the intricacies of language, her fingers moving and shaping thoughts she desperately needed to express. Each sign felt like a step towards liberation, a visionary pathway toward becoming the teacher she aspired to be. Each connection deepened her resolve, redirecting her focus away from the gnarled roots of familial expectations and societal perceptions. She felt herself threading closer to Margaret's world, a place where barriers crumbled and empathy reigned, yet, lurking behind this blossoming self-assurance was the tension of impending confrontation. Emma stole a glance at the dynamic unfolding between Daniel and Alex. The stormy minor notes in their exchange hinted at more than just a standard father-son relationship. The deeper implications unnerved her. They stood as a reminder of the powerful figures whose paths diverged from hers, yet who held the power to influence her journey. "Emma!" Daniel shouted, breaking her concentration. "We work, we don't socialize during business hours." Searing humiliation rushed through her, clashing with the newfound bravery that had soared moments before. Emma's throat tightened. She had nearly forgotten about business borders, leaning for solace in authenticity with Margaret. Was this her path stifled once more by the weight of others' expectations? She clenched her fists, reassembling her spirit. "I'm learning," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling flame of uncertainty. "I want to empower others." Yet behind her resolve lurked doubt, threatening to undermine every step she took toward freedom. She recognized that here lay more than personal stakes. Her journey toward teaching and understanding was caught in a complex web full of family obligations and the ghosts of success that shadowed her every move. Determined, Emma locked eyes with Margaret. Together, she reaffirmed, "We will set the bar higher." But even as she voiced this, the cracks beneath the surface widened, threatening to splinter this moment of clarity. As Alex turned away from the conversation with Daniel, his gaze shifted toward Emma, and for just a fleeting instant, their eyes met. An unspoken recognition hung between them. What did he see? Did he sense the struggle pulsing just beneath the surface of her confidence? Little did she know, in his eyes lay the key to unforeseen challenges and a chance for true metamorphosis. Emma felt the ground beneath her begin to tremble, the solid path she thought she had charted now a creaky boardwalk over deep waters. What secrets were hidden in Alex's penetrating gaze, and how might they draw her deeper into the whirlpool of transformation she so fiercely sought? Emma stood there, a muted whirlwind of emotions, the weight of her actions pressing against her chest. As the moments passed, the diner seemed to shrink, enclosing her in a sphere of anxiety. The revolving conversations between Daniel and Alex were mere echoes, losing meaning against the thunderous noise in her mind. She had started to peel away the layers of her fears. Would it all come crashing down again? Margaret caught her eye again, signaling with an infectious enthusiasm that wrapped around Emma like a warm embrace. She felt pulled back into that beacon of strength, invigorated by the idea that she could make a difference not just for Margaret, but for herself. It was a path, albeit precarious, that she had been hesitant to traverse. "Let us start with the fingerspelling, Emma," Margaret signed, gesturing to the letters. Each stroke of the fingers in the air not only conveyed a message but also a calling, a beckoning to unravel the tight knot of insecurity that bound her. Striding through the uncertainty, Emma mimicked Margaret's motions, her mind barely keeping pace with her hands. Each letter was a slight defiance against the constraints that Daniel had unintentionally woven around her. As she practiced, the diner blossomed back into focus, the bustling environment painting a stark contrast to her own growing intensity. Her confidence swayed like a pendulum, oscillating between frustration at her delayed physical responses and the thrilling rush of achievement as she slowly pieced together coherent signs, but amid the tender connection with Margaret, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Alex's arrival had carved a new fissure in her nascent confidence, and now that sliver of vulnerability beckoned intrigue. Could the same man who held weight in his father's eyes possibly be a vessel for transformative opportunities? Or would he just amplify her fears? Doubt crept in again. The moment Daniel had cut through her progress felt bone deep, perhaps her ambitions diminished in a place overshadowed by their expectations. Would she always remain the waitress holding on to scrap dreams? An urge built within her, a feverish desire to take control, to seize her narrative back from the dominant figures of her life. "Margaret," she stammered between breaths, can we do a dialogue? I want to practice beyond this, to understand feelings, not just words." The request sprang from a desire to engage in deeper connections beyond her limitations. With a series of enthusiastic gestures, Margaret agreed. Emma felt a surge of adrenaline course through her veins, battling against the chains of anxiety that sought to keep her stagnant. She immersed herself in the language, her fraying confidence weaving into a tapestry of newfound determination, and then, as their silent conversation flowed like a gentle tide around them, Emma noticed Alex again. He was observing, but this time the depth of his gaze seemed to pierce through her facade. Did he recognize the intricacies of her struggle? The journey she sought to embark upon? In that instant, Emma resolved to step beyond the boundaries of her fears. The fear was not about failing but rather about not trying at all. She pulled in a breath, steady and deliberate, as clarity enveloped her thoughts for a moment. "Alex," she called out, taking a bold step towards him, the whole diner fading from view, the noise silencing in her mind. In that split second, her world had boiled down to this one act, an act of daring to confront not just him, but everything that had held her back. "Can I talk to you?" The piercing look now bore a hint of curiosity as their paths crossed. Would this bold move lead to an alliance that could shatter her doubts? Or would it unveil deeper complexities that lay beneath the surface, both in him and within herself? Emma felt her heart pound, the stakes suddenly higher. In her quest for empowerment, she could either live with regret or dare to plunge into the unknown entirely. What awaited her on the other side of this pivotal moment? Would she unravel or flourish? As Emma approached Alex, the cafe atmosphere faded into a soft, glimmering blur. Each step was laced with uncertainty yet ignited by an undercurrent of brave resolve. How often had she retreated into the safety of silence? Today, she chose to unravel the chain that bound her. "Can we talk?" she repeated, willing the tremor in her voice to settle. The words hung between them, fragile yet potent, an invocation of her unguarded self. Alex regarded her silently, the curiosity in his eyes a welcoming gesture, prompting her to thrust deeper into this precarious space. "Sure," he said, gesturing to a quieter corner of the diner. Emma felt a tidal wave of intimidation crash down momentarily, but as she stepped into their secluded spot, she inhaled a soothing breath. The very act of confronting her doubts served to bolster her determination. "Thanks for listening," she began, surprised at how easily the words flowed. "I've been learning American Sign Language." A mix of pride and humility danced through her, laying bare a dream that had long felt suffocated by practicality and fear. I want to improve my skills so I can communicate with people beyond my immediate world. Alex's expression shifted from curiosity to genuine interest. That's impressive, Emma. Why pursue that specifically? His inquiry wasn't merely polite, it was a prompt to delve deeper into herself and the motivations coursing through her. It's personal, she admitted, the familiar darkness of vulnerability creeping in. I've always felt limited. Growing up in a small town, it's been hard to imagine a life filled with more than waiting tables and small talk. She paused, gauging his reaction. As she met his gaze, she noticed an unexpected warmth, a mirror that reflected her desire for greatness back to her. I want to break free from these shadows, she continued, the words gaining momentum. And Margaret, she's inspiring. Every time I practice, I feel myself pushing the boundaries of what I thought I could do. Margaret? He tilted his head thoughtfully. The woman from your diner? Emma nodded, impressed by his attentiveness. She's teaching me that there's so much beyond verbal language. There are lives intertwined in every sign. A flicker of understanding ignited in Alex's eyes. I can appreciate that. There's a beauty in connections formed without traditional words. Her heart soared at the recognition, but beneath it lingered a familiar thread of doubt. But what if I fail? What if my aspirations are just a fantasy? I don't want to be the same girl who hides behind the apron. Alex leaned in slightly, ensuring he had her full attention. Everyone struggles with failure before they achieve something real. It's the courage to confront that fear that transforms lives. His words resonated far deeper than she anticipated, stirring the embers of her potential. She considered the notion that perhaps her limitations were self-imposed shadows and that Alex's genuine curiosity was not only a spark of interest but a challenge to expand herself. I want to promote a dialogue about deafness in our community, she declared suddenly, emboldened. Maybe through my experiences, I can inspire others to learn and connect too. It's time to move beyond just being the waitress. A palpable silence enveloped them, one that buzzed with possibilities. Alex studied her, an inscrutable expression sweeping across his face. That's incredible, Emma. Have you thought about how you might start? The conversation pivoted from a brief exchange of personal insight into a dynamic dialogue filled with plans and aspirations. Emma's lingering fears began to dissipate with every suggestion Alex offered, as each idea led her closer to defining a course for her future. As the minutes slipped by, a question emerged in the air: could she truly turn these ambitions into reality? In that moment, she felt not just seen, but encouraged to stand and defend her dreams. Perhaps Alex was right, each small step could lead her somewhere new, an empowerment forged by her willingness to break from familiar patterns. Determination ignited anew, her pulse raced as their ideas flourished. But just as the prospect of change blossomed, a disturbing thought scratched at her resolve. What if Alex had expectations that brought more pressure than support? Emma's gaze darted toward the cafe door as a fresh wave of patrons entered, another ebb in her take on destiny. Would she risk losing this drive to outside perceptions, to the limits of what she believed was possible? I need to think this through, she murmured, the dawning reality swirling within her once more. What if? Emma, whatever path you choose, just know I'm here to help, he assured her, leaning closer, urgency cloaked in sincerity. In that electrifying moment, Emma realized choices loomed larger than fears that had anchored her for too long. Would she seize this unexpected allyship to magnify her voice and carve out the life she intended, or would she retreat back into the familiar shadows? As Emma's heart beat louder, the diner swirled back into vivid focus, filling her senses with renewed energy. She found herself teetering at the brink of action, ready to redefine her narrative. The question lingered: would she finally embrace the transformative journey ahead, or allow the weight of doubt to send her retreating into silence once more? Emma stepped out of the diner, each footfall reverberating with the weight of her decision. The chilly air outside contrasted sharply with the warmth of the cafe, bringing a crisp clarity to her swirling thoughts. She couldn't dismiss the surge of excitement and trepidation that chased her as she walked. Conversations with Alex had wrapped around her like a reassuring cloak, but now, with the familiarity of the cafe fading behind her, the shadows of hesitation crept back in. The world around her, typically a muted palette of routine, suddenly felt vivid, pulsating with potential. Her mind raced. What if she did approach community leaders about her initiatives? What resources did she need? She couldn't plan every detail overnight, but there had to be a way to navigate the chaos into something tangible. As she walked, she envisioned the potential dialogue she could foster about deafness. Margaret's lessons echoed in her mind, ways to communicate, to connect more deeply, to walk alongside those often unseen. Emma had never considered herself a leader, but the thrill of the idea spiked her pulse. What could she discover about herself if she took the plunge? A distant sound drew her attention, laughter, familiar and comforting. The first glimmer of a plan danced in her thoughts. She could create a workshop, draw in members of her community, from local activists to parents. They could sit together, share stories that transcended barriers. But there was one significant hurdle she couldn't ignore: her own insecurity. A rush of vulnerability flooded her senses, bringing her to a halt in front of a nearby bookshop. She instinctively turned toward its window, the display showcasing various books on personal empowerment and sign language. Branching out, she whispered to herself, a phrase that felt foreign, yet alluring. Emma had always yearned for freedom beyond her apron, yet each time she gazed into the world, fear had pulled her back. Determined, she stepped inside, the scent of aged paper welcoming her like an old friend. She wandered through the aisles, her fingers grazing the spines of books. A particular one caught her eye: Transforming Communication, a Guide to American Sign Language. This was no ordinary tutorial, it was a resource for those wishing to create genuine connections. As she flipped through its pages, ideas began to crystallize. This could be a starting point. Walking a bit taller, Emma approached the counter, the urgency of change pumping through her veins. "Can you hold this for me?" she asked the clerk, pointing at the book. The clerk smiled uncertainly, but his nod buoyed her spirit. "Sure. I'll keep it behind the counter." Emma felt a surge of empowerment as she returned to her thoughts. With this book in hand, and Alex's supportive words still fresh in her mind, she would chart her course. Yet, the possibility of failure still loomed, casting a shadow over her aspirations. What if her workshops flopped? What if people turned a deaf ear, uninterested in her message? It would be easy to slip back into her old fears, hiding behind safety nets woven from self-doubt. But she wouldn't let fear dictate her next steps this time. The very notion terrified her, yet the prospect of remaining stagnant terrified her even more. As she stepped out of the shop, the chill of the evening air bit at her cheeks, snapping her back to the moment. She needed to commit to this shift, to confront the voices that whispered inadequacy. She was more than a waitress, she was Emma, a woman on the brink of something outstanding. With newfound resolve coursing through her, Emma spotted a community center across the street. It stood tall and inviting, promising opportunities to connect with others, resources to explore. Her stomach twisted with anticipation. This is it, she thought, narrowing her eyes with determination. I'll visit it tomorrow. But just as she took a step forward, a familiar voice tugged her attention. Emma. It was Alex, weaving through the streets and heading toward her. Her heart fluttered slightly. Had she truly made an impression? She hesitated, wondering what his arrival could mean for her fragile plan. Would he challenge her again or offer the support she so desperately needed? But more pressing was her own fear: were her aspirations now intertwined with someone else? As Alex approached, a cascade of questions flooded her mind. Would she share her next steps with him? Or keep this budding plan close to her heart for now? With unresolved anticipation hanging in the air, Emma realized that the moment of truth had begun once more. Emma's pulse quickened as Alex closed the distance between them. His easy smile and the warmth of his presence were magnetic, yet she felt like a deer caught in headlights, struggling to find the right words. This moment, with him standing there, was charged with her potential, and it was terrifying. "Hey. I'm glad to see you," Alex said, tilting his head slightly as if he could intuit her nerves. "Hi, Alex." Her voice caught momentarily, uncertainty tightening her throat. "I was just thinking about a project." "Really? What kind of project?" His curiosity felt genuine, and it pricked at her hesitation, urging her to step beyond her comfort zone. Emma inhaled deeply, deciding to edge closer to the truth. "I want to create a workshop for awareness surrounding deafness. To help bridge communication gaps." The words tumbled out, each one resonating with the weight of her dreams. That he seemed genuinely intrigued, his brow furrowing slightly in thought. "That sounds incredible," he responded, enthusiasm lighting his eyes. "What's motivating you?" She hesitated again, wondering how much to reveal. "I've spent so long in this routine," she motioned around them, serving coffee, feeling invisible, really. "But there's more I can do. I want to help people connect." Alex's expression softened, and Emma caught an unexpected vulnerability in his gaze. "You're not invisible to me." His words swirled around her, embedding themselves in the fabric of her confidence. She felt a tiny surge of empowerment, and with it, the walls of doubt she had built against her aspirations began to soften. "I want to take this step, but I'm afraid it won't work. What if nobody shows up?" He took a step closer, closing the physical and metaphorical distance. "You can't control others' reactions, Emma. But you can control how hard you fight for what you believe in. This is a crucial step for you. It means facing your fears and questioning them." Her breath hitched, not just from the wisdom he shared but from the realization that she was no longer alone in her aspirations. Perhaps she didn't have to shoulder this burden alone. But exposing her vulnerabilities to Alex, was she ready for that? What if it's just a silly idea? She countered, holding on to the vestiges of her doubt. "Nothing is silly if you believe in it. You believe in connecting with people. Why not take this chance?" A wave of conviction washed over her at his encouragement, but the thought of stepping into the unknown still carried a heavy weight. Yet Alex stood before her, unwavering and incomprehensibly supportive. "Okay, I can start small," she spoke, tasting the promise that change could be gradual. "Maybe I'll invite a few close friends first to gauge the response." "That's a great idea. It gives you a chance to practice too. Why don't we gather over coffee, and I can help brainstorm?" The weight behind his words ignited a spark of inspiration, pulling her further into this vision of collaboration. "Yeah, that could work. It's a start." As they talked about logistics, a mix of fear and exhilaration spiraled within her, a heady combination, pushing her further toward self-discovery. She hadn't anticipated this support, but now, she felt its grounding influence, urging her to envision possibilities beyond her imagination. But just as excitement filled the air, a nagging voice reminded her of the lurking insecurities that had plagued her for years. What if she failed? What if she exposed herself as an imposter, trying to lead discussions about experiences she could never fully own? In that moment of intertwining emotions, Alex's hand brushed against her wrist, a simple gesture, yet it electrified her senses, reminding her of the importance of connection. Still, the gravity of what she was proposing weighed heavily, and a silent conflict brewed within her. "Emma?" His voice broke through the fog of her fears. "Are you still with me?" She nodded, yet her heart wrestled with uncertainties. Could she rise to the occasion? All this new ambition, all these budding ideas, perhaps they were instruments for her growth, but at what cost? As they moved forward in their conversation, the shadows of her fear continued to loom, but now another question pressed against her mind: would sharing her journey with Alex amplify her courage or kindle her fears? With a swirling mix of determination and anxiety, Emma excused herself for a moment. She needed clarity, a quiet moment to reflect, to confront the storm of emotions residing deep within her. But as she stepped away, a revelation lingered: perhaps the best way to confront doubt was through action. The time had come to not only plan but to embrace the unknown. Would she dare push beyond her limits, stepping into the light of possibility? Emma stepped outside the cafe, the brisk air hitting her face like a splash of cold water. It jolted her out of the heady moment with Alex and back into the reality of her life. She allowed herself a few deep breaths, trying to settle the turmoil churning in her stomach. The sunlight bathed her surroundings in warmth, nudging her thoughts toward action rather than indecision. What had just transpired with Alex had felt like a watershed moment in her life. His encouragement had ignited a flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, she could turn her aspirations into something real. But standing there, under the natural brilliance of a sunny afternoon, her determination started to waver. She needed a plan, a concrete one that could bolster her transient spark of motivation into something more enduring. The cafe's corner booth offered her a refuge. She settled in, pulled out her notebook, and prepared to map out her thoughts. Scrawling down her ideas, she realized they fell into two main categories: awareness and connection. The workshop needed a solid framework that educated participants while sparking genuine connection. She jotted down bullet points, focusing as her pen glided across the page faster than her anxious mind could keep up. Emma had spent years practicing the art of listening and engaging, two skills she had honed during her shifts at the cafe. Those skills now became the cornerstone of her workshop. She began to draft a potential agenda, discussions on deaf culture, common misconceptions, and the basic signs of communication. The more she wrote, the clearer her vision became, and with clarity came confidence. Each bullet point nourished her burgeoning belief that she could not only run a workshop but could also inspire others. The doubt began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about giving a voice to those who didn't have an opportunity to foster connection and understanding. Still, deeper questions nagged at her. What if she wasn't enough? What if she opened herself up only to be rejected or ridiculed? Reflecting on her life, she recognized a pattern: she often sold herself short. But this time felt different. There was a pulse of urgency in her chest pushing her forward. This wasn't merely a whimsical fantasy but a valid endeavor that deserved to be taken seriously. With renewed determination, Emma made a list of names, friends and colleagues who could provide feedback, support, or even join her in this fledgling idea. As she itemized those close to her, another realization hit. She needed a broader audience than just friends who would likely give her sympathetic nods. If she was going to create real change, she needed to reach beyond her immediate circle. Lost in thought, she noticed a woman sitting at the opposite end of the cafe. She conversed animatedly with her companion using fluid signs, joy evident on her face. A flood of emotion washed over Emma. Here was the embodiment of what she hoped to achieve: engagement through understanding. Emma pulled out her phone and searched for local organizations or communities that aligned with her mission, hoping to find people who were passionate about deaf awareness. It was time to partner with those who could actually help her make this vision a reality. As she began to type, fingers flying over the keyboard, the excitement of possibility surged within her once more. She decided to reach out to some organizations, to extend her purpose beyond the cafe, to push through the walls of her self-imposed limitations. Each email sent became a small step toward the unknown, a bridge over the chasm of her fears. However, as she prepared to hit send on her last email, a wave of doubt washed over her again. What if they ignored her? What if they dismissed her because she was just a waitress with grand ideas? That familiar fear crept in, trying to anchor her back into the comfort of her old routine, but then it hit her: every successful endeavor begins with a single step into discomfort. Emma stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor, drawing startled glances from those around her. No more hesitation. I can do this, she affirmed under her breath, now convinced that scaling her aspirations was not only possible but necessary. With a new sense of urgency, Emma walked away from the cafe, feeling empowered by her decisions. There were many challenges ahead, but with every ounce of energy within her, she was ready to not just participate in her life but to lead it. And then she remembered Alex's words. They echoed in her mind as she headed toward the exit. The risk of failure didn't define her success. She was about to embrace not just a workshop but a pivotal shift in her identity. Yet somewhere deep inside, a question lingered: how far would she go to realize this dream, and could she hold on to her sense of self while doing so? This new chapter in her life had just begun, and Emma was eager to see what awaited her. Emma's heart raced as she stepped onto the sidewalk, the chill of the air seemingly igniting her new sense of purpose. Each footfall resonated with a blend of excitement and trepidation, as if she were walking the precipice of discovery. Navigating toward her apartment, she replayed the prospect of her workshop, no longer a distant dream but a tangible objective, a promise to herself and to those whose voices she sought to elevate. With every step, however, the doubts began to creep back in, weaving through her newfound determination like a dark thread in a brightly woven tapestry. Who would truly listen? The vibrant sign language exchange she had witnessed earlier haunted her mind, highlighting her inadequacies. She had observed fluidity, ease, and connection, a world where she didn't quite belong. Did she really have the skills to foster that in others? Was her self-taught knowledge enough? Returning home, she plopped down at her kitchen table, its surface cluttered with remnants from her day-to-day life, half-drunk coffee mugs, stacks of unopened bills, and echoing silence. This was her sanctuary, yet it suddenly felt confining, its walls pressing in. How could she transform this space into a hub of connection and understanding? Opening her laptop, she began to type, this time drafting a letter to herself. She poured out her fears, her aspirations, and most importantly, reminders of her capabilities. This was not simply self-affirmation but a strategy. Guilt and fear thrived when she allowed them to dwell in silence. Putting her thoughts into words acted as a catharsis, clarifying her vision and grounding her resolve, yet, as she wrote, the looming question of how surfaced with relentless persistence. How would she conduct the workshop? Who was she to lead discussions on a culture she had tangentially encountered? Internet search results flooded her screen with vibrant success stories of others, certified professionals, experienced educators, each one brilliantly illuminated in contrast to her uncertainty. Comparing herself to those who had paved their paths felt like skimming through a glossy magazine filled with glamorous lifestyles. As if stripped of color, Emma could only see the monochrome of her challenges. What did she have that they did not? With a sharp intake of breath, the realization struck. She had true connection. Her years in a cafe had cultivated not just immense listening skills but the empathy needed to nurture that connection. With renewed vigor, she began to outline the format of her workshop. Emma envisioned an intimate setting where participants could share their own experiences, stories of alienation, hope, and eventually, understanding. The thought ignited a warm glow within her chest. This was not simply about deaf awareness but about bridging gaps, creating dialogues, giving participants a chance to voice their truths. Fully engaged, she plotted icebreakers and discussion prompts, filling pages with ideas. The darkness of doubt dissolved, replaced by a burgeoning sense of agency. The workshop wasn't just about facts and figures, it was about unlocking the human experience. Every exchange, every laugh, every moment of vulnerability became a building block for a community, and Emma would be its architect. However, the question that had once lingered nagged at her now with increasing urgency. What if no one showed up? What if her preparation and passion fizzled into an empty room? Pushing the thought aside, she reminded herself of what she was passionate about, the voices of the unheard. Crushing those mounting anxieties, she focused on execution, visualizing the posters she would create, the outreach she would pursue once more. She could harness this experience to tap into networks, leveraging local community centers and schools, intertwining education with engagement. As she clicked save on her document of possibilities, excitement coursed through her veins. This was at her inflection point. Each decision she had made since leaving the cafe told her that she was on her way to realizing her potential, but just as clarity swept over her, an unexpected thought surfaced: what if this was only the beginning? With that question echoing in her mind, the implications of her journey weighed down on her. The world around her was larger, more complex, and filled with diverse narratives waiting to be heard. How would she embrace this new reality, and where would it lead her? Emma stared at her screen, eyes aglow with ambition and trepidation. The quest to not only lead her vision but to redefine herself had only just begun. In that moment, an epiphany loomed. She needed to confront her past, and perhaps that meant facing the one person she had avoided, the voice of her own doubts. Emma stood in front of the community center, heart pounding with a blend of euphoria and fear. The air was thick with anticipation as she replayed the course of events leading up to this moment. In just a few short weeks, she had transformed from a timid waitress into the organizer of a workshop dedicated to bridging communication gaps through sign language. This transformation was monumental, not just for others, but for herself. The room was filling steadily, each face representing an opportunity for connection. Friends, family, and even some acquaintances from the diner had come to witness her leap into leadership. Emma felt a surge of recognition wash over her, the praises from Alex echoed in her mind, urging her onward. Taking a deep breath, she surveyed the space, flashing back to the myriad of moments that had strengthened her resolve. She remembered her first conversation with Margaret and how their bond had inspired her. Each connection she now set about forming had roots grounded in that initial spark, an ember of passion that had transformed into a flame. As participants seated themselves, Emma opened the workshop with a confident smile. Welcome. Today, we're going to explore the beauty of communication beyond spoken words. The room grew quieter, expectant. As she explained the day's agenda, a mix of excitement and nervousness coursed through her. This was her moment to foster understanding, to bridge gaps of silence with the melody of shared experiences. Opening the floor for introductions, she found herself leaning into her newly acquired skills, engaging each participant with warmth and attentiveness. As they shared their aspirations and experiences surrounding deafness, each story added a vibrant thread to the tapestry she envisioned. Emma felt the weight of her past doubts slipping away. She was no longer just a waitress but a facilitator of meaningful connections. The workshop flowed seamlessly, every exchange reinforcing her purpose. As the clock ticked by, Emma facilitated dialogues on culture and experience, enriching the room with compassion and commitment. Gradually, she unveiled the power of sign language, simple phrases, spirited interactions, laughter. Participants immersed themselves in the learning, eager to connect beyond the constraints of verbal communication. Through the obstacles her insecurities had constructed, she demonstrated a mastery of the subject, showing newfound confidence that unfolded organically. With each successful interaction, Emma felt her identity solidify. She wasn't merely someone who served meals but a conduit for empathy and understanding. At the workshop's conclusion, she gathered everyone for a final sharing session. Thank you all for being here today, she began, her voice steady. I hope you carry these connections forward into your everyday lives, igniting dialogues that inspire change. As applause filled the space, she felt a rush of validation wash over her. The faces surrounding her hadn't just changed, they looked inspired, passionately engaged in their own transformations. The workshop had blossomed into something greater than her aspirations. It became a vibrant community stepping towards a shared goal. Emma felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had taken the risk and surpassed her expectations. As she stood there, flushed with joy and accomplishment, Emma recognized that her journey was only just beginning. Deep within her, she already felt the urge to expand her outreach, to plan another workshop, to dive deeper into her advocacy. She had conquered self-doubt, propped herself against the pillars of her ambitions, and emerged victorious. As people began to leave, they shared their gratitude and excitement for the next steps in their journeys. Emma smiled, basking in the recognition of her efforts. She had not only facilitated growth in others but had truly transformed herself. No longer restrained by the confines of her former identity, Emma held her head high, poised to embrace every opportunity that lay ahead. This powerful transformation marked her arrival. As a respected figure, not just trusted within her community but celebrated for the genuine impact she had made. With renewed confidence pulsating through her, Emma stepped into the crisp air outside, ready for whatever awaited her next. Her heart surged with resolve. She had proven to herself that she was capable of achieving greatness by relentlessly pursuing her dreams. Now was the moment to forge ahead, harnessing the momentum she had cultivated. To every viewer preparing to witness this journey unfold, remember, your support matters. You need to subscribe now to never miss out on exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now, it feeds the algorithm and ensures our community thrives. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your actions today can inspire someone to chase their dreams.